Okay, hi, my name is Derene, and I am a child of God, and I am so grateful that I woke up this morning. I woke up this morning and I had so much on my mind that what I'm going to do today, and just felt like staying in bed. And then I remembered, oh my God, don't I have something to do? So my body is not regulated yet. So I just thank God that He woke me up and He will remind me that this is what He had for me to do. I'm going to read from Lamentation 3:25 to 26, and it says, "The Lord is good to those who wait for Him, to the soul who seeks Him. It is good that one should hope and wait quietly for the salvation of the Lord." I'm so grateful for another day. God, as I said, God woke me up, and every day He wakes me is like a time that He tells me that He has things for me to do. And He's actually given me another chance to get it right with Him. Because I'm not perfect, and I know that I mess up all the time. But we have a faithful God who He knows the time and the hour. He knows our beginning and our end. He's our Alpha and our Omega. And just to trust Him, because there's so many things going on in the world. Okay, so let me talk about how I came to know the Lord. I don't really know how I came to know the Lord. I just know that I was young. I was a young child, and growing up, I was born in Jamaica, West Indies, and my mom always took us to church when I was born. So I don't know if, so I always loved the Lord from then, you know? And I remember before we went to church, we would always go to the beach, because we lived close to where the water was. And but I just remember Sunday school and all of that. And I grew up in a family of 6 children, where I was number 5. My parents had a girl, a boy, a girl, a boy, a girl, a boy, and I'm the last girl. And I was born into a family where my dad was an alcoholic, and very abusive to mom. In Jamaica, I didn't live with my dad that much because he traveled, and that's how the family made money. Was he traveled, and we were able to live a life where you could say we were middle class. You know, like my mom had, like helper to help us a lot, with the 6 kids. And I remember like my grandmother, my father's mother would come up once in a while to help us. But I was born like in the city area, so I never really went to like the country part of Jamaica in my, because I was one of the young ones, so I never went. But I used to always pray to God because of the situation. I didn't know nothing else but leaning on God. And I remember that verse that I heard as a young child, that bring the little children to me, you know. And I used to lean on Bible verses as a young kid, The Lord is my shepherd. Because we used to learn Bible verses back then. So I used to lean on those verses to get through a lot of the things that, went through with my parents. Because like when Dad used to come home, then, the abuse will start, then he'll go back, and then we'll have some peace. But there was a point that my mom left us in Jamaica for 2 years, because we also lived right next, they said it takes a village to grow a child. We grew up in a village, like down the street is your godmother, at least my godmother, because I was one of the last ones. So when I was growing up there, my parents had bought a house in the community. So it was a new development. So everybody kind of bought a house at the same time. So I had my 2 godmothers on the street. My grandmother and my aunt lived right next door. So my mom came to America to get our papers right. My dad was already here, but he was doing his own thing, you know. So mom came here, and she left us in Jamaica with my grandma. So it, I think I was like 4 years old that she left us in Jamaica, and then she got our papers right, and then she brought all of us except for my brother Dean, who is special needs, because you had to go through interview and you had to talk to them, and in order to I'm talking about immigration, in order to come up, and I guess Dean said the wrong thing and he wasn't able to come till later. So we all came to America, and I remember we came here with nothing much because we just came with our suitcase. So we left everything behind, our house, everything, the community that we knew, and we moved to the Bronx because the Bronx, New York, was where my parents was, and also where family. Because when people migrate to different countries, they usually migrate where family is, So, we had aunts and uncles and cousins, and a lot of people in the Bronx. So we moved to the Bronx, and I remember it was like a November, and I remember the first time we felt snow and how happy we were. But I had to lean on the Lord because when I came here to America, my parents both were together now, and my father was still abusive and drinking, and the abuse was now constant in our life, and the drinking was constant, and it was verbal and physical abuse. And it so happened that I was my dad's favorite child. I don't know how that could happen because I was one of the last children. But in a black family, you have a lot of stuff with skin color, and we had a lot of different skin colors in my family. I was the darkest one, and my dad loved me because I looked just like his mom, and everybody in the family knew I was his favorite. So he never really bothered me with a lot of the stuff that he did, but it was the abuse was always on my sisters and brothers and my mom, and like my mom would get beaten up by my dad. So I was a child who watched that. I was born into this, so it wasn't something that it just happened, right? So I would always have to pray and to God, and remember that I'm a child of God, and also, my mom always took us to church, so we would always go to church. So, but I would always depend on God, in this situation. And there was a point when we got a little older, that my mom, my mom. But this is my story, God was always the center of my life because that's who my anchor was. There was a point in where my mom, she worked at New York Life Insurance Company in Manhattan, the main building, which is in Fifth Avenue, and underneath it was the bank, which was Chase Manhattan, or I think it was manufacturers at the time before it became Chase. But my mom was an avid saver, so every time she got paid, she would go down to the bank and she would pay her money. She would save, put money in her bank. But one day she went down there and she was in a car. She was in a bank robbery, and there's a lot of racism going on her job, and also she got interrogated, for this bank robbery, as if because she was like the first one online. So the camera picked her up, and it was as if she was the one who robbed the bank. So my mom had a nervous breakdown because of that. And that was her first nervous breakdown. I think I was 11 years old. So not only was I dealing with my dad who had this alcoholic issue, I also now had my mom who had now a mental issue. But that was the first time that she had that mental breakdown. And we had to deal with the mental breakdown all through from that point on. But you know what? God is good, because when I look back, there was a lot of times that she had clarity, and she was actually, there were times that my mom had to be mental, be admitted, and I remember at first when she would have to break down and go in the hospital, they had to get the medication right, and her face will twist up because the medication was too strong. So I was constantly praying for my family. And I don't know why I was put into a family like that, but that's where I was born. And we had to deal with my father's abuse. And we had to deal, and he wasn't good to my mom, She was good to him, but he wasn't good to her. And so that's part of my story. So I anchored onto God all through that, because there was a point where my father and my mom got a divorce. Now we got our own house, we moved in a different part of the Bronx, moving forward. I was still in elementary school, and my mom and dad got a divorce. Now, as the 6 kids, we always traveled together, so we were like best friends. So my parents taught us to actually be one. So we always went everywhere together. So we left the house and came back, and guess what? Mom and dad is getting married again. We were very happy that they were getting divorced. And then all of a sudden, they were getting married again. And so we didn't know what to think about it. We came to the house. There's the priest, there's the pastor, there's his sister, her brother, his brother. All family members getting them married. So as you can see, as children, we had no vote in what happened in our family. So so they did their thing, and we were part of the. I learned later that we were just part of the. We came in after them, but I had to lean on God, really. I remember my dad was very abusive to my sisters and brothers, especially verbally, and especially when he drank. I was also the cook of the family, so I cooked for a family of 8. And I did that from I was 11 years old. And it was, so my family depended on me a lot. I think God put me in that family for a reason. And even though I was one of the youngest, I had a lot of responsibility. And I think at some time, even my mother, my sisters, and my brothers, they, even though they loved me, but my dad's love was always shown for me. And he didn't have that love that he showed, the rest of the family members. So I really had to do through that whole thing. And it wasn't until later on that I had to really ask the Lord to forgive me, because I didn't understand. We wasn't a family that went to AA and for help, or even Al-Anon. Growing up and being in grade sheet, I realized that we were a family that really needed Al-Anon or AA, because we needed to know how to cope with what was going on, and even to help my dad with the whole alcoholism. Because when he drank, he didn't just drink regular liquor. He drank the Jamaican, uh, overproof, rum, and it just turned him into a whole different person when he drank. But he was also a very good dad. Um, my dad taught me a whole bunch of stuff. He was the kind of father that, he made sure that we knew our education. Education was very important to him. He was, and his clarity. He was a dad that if he's doing electrical work, he made sure that all of us lined up and saw how to do it, so that we knew how to do it. He, like he was very good when it came to legal stuff. So he would sit there and he would say, Derene, I need for you to write a paper. And he would dictate what he needs to write, and I would have to write it the way he tells me to write it. And even the skill of putting a stamp on a paper and mailing it off. Some people don't know how to do that, but my dad taught us all of that. So I could look back and say, even the clarity of my two parents, they were great parents. But once they were in, the mental part of their life, it wasn't good. I remember when I was around in a teenager age, I actually went to um, I went to church on my own. So I left my mother's church. She went to a Presbyterian, and I started to go to a Baptist church all on my own. So I started to find my own way as a Christian, and I started to find my own way in church. When I got to college, I went to Brooklyn Tabernacle because I was at engineering school at Polytechnic, and that was the church that I went to. And then I went to different churches. Wherever there was a church, it didn't matter what kind of church. I went because I was rooted in being on going to church. Okay, I know that time is going, and I wanted to go into, so my Christian life was just anchoring on God, Bible verses, um, knowing that God is there all the time, that He'll never leave or forsake me, that no matter what, He's going to take me through this, and He did. And the food, I had a problem with the food because of, I guess, low self-esteem, um, always feeling like I wasn't enough, feeling like I needed, I needed to look good outside. It started when I think I was 12 or so. And I remember, like I also was in grade sheet at one point. I'm in grade sheet now, but when I started with grade sheet, I learned about the alcohol and the food. And I realized that I wasn't eating my alcohol. I wasn't drinking my alcohol like my dad, but I was drinking it. So, and I remember as a young child, they used to always have, a wine in the house that was sweet. And I would always sneak and eat the wine. And then also, foods like, one of my favorite foods was the Jamaican rum cake, and that cake is very sweet. And if it was in the house, I would sneak and eat until when it was gone, and so now a lot of my family members didn't have that problem because they, the wine will stay there and the cake will stay there. But I just, had to have stuff like that. So these were things that actually started me on my eating pattern. And then I remember one time me and my sister Erica, we went and we did hypnotism for weight loss. Cause we thought that, we need, I think I was young at the time. I was probably still a teenager. And I think that hypnotism probably caused us to gain weight more than, because we wasn't even fat at the time. But we just had that mental, thing about our weight. My mother also would give us also once in a while, like bitters or things like that that would clean us out and stuff like that. And I would probably take it as something that could help me to lose. But even though I didn't have a weight problem, I remember when I started working, I went to one of those weight programs, where you lost weight, and I lost a lot of weight on the program, and But it came back because once I went back on my eating, so I was on this yo-yo diet, for a while, and then I started with when it was 2018 that I found gray sheep, and when I when I went to the gray sheep, I think it was 218, 219. The weight actually started coming off because of the carbs, the grains, and the sugar. And it was the first time that I really wasn't struggling with the weight loss because I was eating in a way that I wasn't drinking my alcohol like I was used to. And I learned a lot about weight loss at the time, and I learned I learned that I really had to. I had a problem, just like my dad had a problem with alcohol. I had a problem with the food, and my daily, how I use the word daily, is I actually read the word, like sometimes when I do the program that Pat does with I do the Bible reading, but sometimes I really am feeling low and I can't really do that. So I'll read a scripture. I'll do a devotional. I I pray. I ask God to help me because sometimes you really can't read the whole word, but you could talk to God even if it's, God, please help me today. Just being in communication with God and knowing that God will never leave me or forsake me. The Bible verses that we remember, those are the words that takes me through each day. I go to church, and I pray. I really believe that we really do have to fellowship with each other because when we do, sometimes in a word is all we need to get us. Praising the Lord is very important. I'm going to stop now because I think I have exhausted my time. But I just want to thank God for this opportunity. I know I talked a lot about my upbringing with my dad and my mom, but that was really where my beginning started as a Christian, and just anchoring to His word as I was going through that whole scenario, and thinking that as I'm growing up, this will never end. This is just my life. But we do grow up. 18 years is not a lot, and dad and mom was who they were, and they both were believers, but when men then it changes people, and I'm so grateful that God was in the midst of the whole thing, taking us through, even when we didn't think we thought it was dark moments sometimes. So I just thank God to tell people to hold on because God is there still.